The night market was alive with strange colors and loud voices. Neon signs flickered above narrow streets, and the smell of roasted alien spices floated in the air. But in the middle of this busy crowd, there was silence around one girl. Wherever she walked, people stepped back. Their faces showed fear, and their whispers cut deeper than knives. She lowered her head, her long silver hair hiding her face, but she could still hear them. "Don't go near her," she's cursed. No alien should touch her. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small basket. She wanted only to buy bread, but even the shopkeeper refused to take her coins. His eyes darted nervously. He pointed to the door and muttered, "Leave." Her throat burned. She was not sick, she was not dangerous, yet the people of her colony treated her like poison. From the day she was born, the elders had called her unlucky. Her family abandoned her. The rest of the city made her a ghost while she still lived. The girl found an empty corner near the edge of the market. She sat on the cold ground, hugging her knees, pretending she could not hear the laughter, the footsteps. The way mothers pulled their children away from her path. It was always the same. She had stopped crying years ago, but tonight her eyes burned again. She told herself, no one will ever come close. No one will ever care. But that night was not like the others. A stranger walked into the marketplace taller than most. His build strong, his clothes simple but not alien-made. His eyes were sharp, scanning the stalls, and his step showed he was not from here. The crowd noticed him, and some whispered in fear. He was a human, one of the few species that had arrived on this planet after the Great War. The humans seemed lost. He held a small map device but frowned at the glowing screen, confused by the twisting streets. He stopped, turned in a circle, then noticed something unusual. A clear space in the market, an open circle where no one dared to step. And at the center of that silence sat the girl. Her pale skin glowed faintly under the neon light. Her hair shimmered like silver rivers, but her face was downcast, hidden behind her arms. The human blinked. Why was no one near her? Why was the crowd avoiding her like a shadow? Curiosity pulled him closer. The crowd gasped, whispers rising like a storm. He's going near her. Doesn't he know what she is? He'll be cursed too. The girl lifted her head, shocked to see someone stepping toward her. Her wide eyes met his. For a moment, she thought he was making a mistake. She tried to warn him. "Stop, don't come closer," her voice cracked. I'm not safe." The human paused but did not step back. Instead, he crouched down, his face calm. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. The words pierced her heart. No one had asked her that before. Not once, she shook her head. "You don't understand. You should leave. Everyone says if you touch me, you'll suffer." But he only tilted his head, a faint smile on his lips. "I don't believe in curses." The crowd gasped again. Some turned away, expecting disaster. Others stayed, waiting to see if the human would regret his choice. The girl's breath caught in her chest. Why wasn't he afraid? Why was he still looking at her like she was a person? Her hands tightened around the empty basket. For the first time in her life, she felt something strange hope. The human extended his hand, not touching her, just offering it in kindness. "Come on, you don't have to sit here alone." Her heart pounded. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to believe it was a cruel trick. But his eyes were steady, and his voice was warm, and that was when she realized tonight was different. Tonight, for the first time, someone was not turning away. Someone was coming closer. Asterisk, the girl sat frozen, staring at the human's hand. It hovered just inches away, steady and patient, but he didn't force it closer. Nobody had ever done this before. Every other creature she met looked at her with fear or disgust. Yet this man was waiting calm, like he truly wanted her to decide. Her throat felt dry. "You should go," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They'll hate you if you stay near me." The human glanced at the crowd. Dozens of alien eyes watched in silence, whispering like buzzing insects. He frowned. "They already hate me," he said. "I'm human." That's enough for them. His honesty shocked her. She blinked. Humans were rare on this planet. Most had left after the war. The ones who stayed kept to themselves, never mixing with alien society. But this one stood here, in front of her, not caring about the rumors, not afraid of the curse everyone believed she carried. Slowly, she lowered her arms and looked at him properly. He was not like the others she had seen. His skin was rougher, tanned by sun and battles. His hair was dark, messy, as if he didn't care to style it. His eyes, strange brown eyes, looked straight into hers, not away. "What do you want?" She asked finally, suspicion heavy in her voice. "To help," he said simply. She let out a bitter laugh. "Help? No one can help me. I was born wrong. No alien will touch me. I am untouchable." His brows knitted together. "You believe that?" Her heart twisted. She didn't want to believe it, but years of isolation had forced her to. The stares, the whispers, the loneliness, how could she not? The human reached into a small bag on his shoulder. The crowd leaned forward, some expecting a weapon, others waiting for a sign of weakness. Instead, he pulled out a piece of flat bread wrapped in cloth. He broke it in half and held one piece out to her. The smell of fresh grain made her stomach ache. She hadn't eaten all day. Yet she stared at the bread as if it were poison. "What's this?" she asked. "Food," he said with a grin. "You look like you need it." Her hands shook. "If I take it." "If you touch me," I said, "I don't believe in curses," he interrupted gently. "If something happens, it happens to me. Not you." The words melted her defenses. Slowly, carefully, she reached out. Their fingers brushed as she took the bread. A sharp gasp ran through the crowd. Mothers pulled children away. Some aliens spat on the ground, muttering prayers against bad luck, but nothing happened. No lightning. No fire. No curse. The girl's eyes widened as she held the bread. Tears threatened to fall, but she blinked them back. She couldn't show weakness. Still, she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" The human tore into his own piece, chewing casually, as if the entire market wasn't holding its breath. "Because no one should eat alone," he said. Her heart pounded harder than it had in years. She bit into the bread. Warmth spread through her chest, not from the food, but from the simple act of being treated like she was normal. Like she was worth something. The human leaned against the wall beside her, ignoring the hostile stares. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Nobody asked her name anymore. They only called her the Cursed One. Quietly she said, "Layara," he nodded. "I'm Daniel, Daniel." She repeated it in her mind, the sound of it strange but comforting. For a brief moment, the world around them faded, the whispers, the fear, the hatred. All that existed was the taste of bread and the warmth of someone sitting beside her. Then a stone struck the ground near her feet. The spell broke. "Leave her, human." A voice shouted from the crowd. "You don't know what you're doing." Daniel's eyes hardened. He stood up slowly, shielding Layara with his body. His voice was calm but strong. "I know exactly what I'm doing." The crowd stirred uneasily, anger rising. But Layara felt something new, a fragile, flickering light inside her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't completely alone. The stone rolled across the ground and stopped near Lyra's bare feet. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. For years, she had endured insults, whispers, and rejection. But never before had the crowd dared to throw something. Tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't alone. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between her and the crowd. His stance was firm, shoulders squared, like a wall made of flesh and willpower. His eyes swept across the angry faces glaring back at him. "You should walk away, human," a tall alien with red scales shouted. His voice cracked through the night air. "She's cursed. If you defend her, you'll share her fate." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "Maybe I don't care about your curses," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of steel. The crowd stirred. Fear mixed with anger. Some spat at the ground. Others shook their heads, muttering. No one dared come closer, but their hatred filled the air like smoke. Liara sat behind him, heart pounding. Her hands clutched the bread he had given her. She wanted to speak, to tell him to leave before the crowd turned violent. But the words stuck in her throat. No one had ever stood for her. No one. Why? She whispered. Her voice trembled. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel didn't look back at her. His eyes stayed on the crowd. "Because no one should be treated like this." The words pierced her chest. Simple, direct, but powerful. Another voice rose from the mob. An old woman, her face twisted with fear, shouted, "She brings death. My son touched her once, and the next day he fell ill. Do you want to suffer the same, human?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "People get sick. That's life. Blaming her won't bring him back." The woman's cry echoed, but Daniel's words cut through the lies like a blade. Liara's heart thudded painfully. For the first time, someone was challenging the story she had carried all her life. The story that she was poison, that she was untouchable. The red-scaled alien stepped forward, anger flashing in his yellow eyes. "Leave now, before you regret it." Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Regret?" He shifted slightly, his hand resting on the hilt of a small knife at his belt. Not a weapon of war, but enough to show he wasn't defenseless. "I regret nothing," the crowd gasped. The air thickened. For a moment, Liara thought violence would erupt. But then, like a wave breaking, the mob lost its courage. Muttering, they backed away into the shadows, their threats dissolving into silence. One by one, the market lights dimmed as stalls closed. Fear ruled them more than anger. Soon only a handful of curious eyes remained, watching from afar. Daniel turned, finally meeting Lyra's gaze. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head quickly, though her body trembled. "No, but you shouldn't have done that. They'll hate you now too." Daniel knelt down, his expression calm. "I've been hated before. It doesn't kill me." She swallowed hard. Her chest tightened with something unfamiliar, something dangerous. "Hope, why me?" she asked again. Her voice was so soft, he almost didn't hear it. "Why would you choose to stand with me? You don't even know who I am." Daniel studied her, his eyes steady. "I don't need to know who you are to see what's wrong. They see a curse. I see a girl who's starving, alone, and treated unfairly. That's enough." Her throat closed. She wanted to cry, but forced herself not to. For years, she had built walls around her heart. But this human, with his simple words and stubborn courage, was breaking them brick by brick. The market was empty now, except for the two of them. The silence felt heavy, but not hopeless. Daniel stood and offered his hand again, palm open. "Come on, let's get out of here before they change their minds." Liara stared at his hand. Her mind screamed at her to stay hidden, to run, to keep her distance like she always had. But her heart told her to take it. She lifted her trembling hand and placed it in his. For the first time in her life, she felt warmth not as a threat, but as safety. And as he helped her to her feet, Liara realized something she had never dared to believe. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't untouchable after all. The marketplace was quiet now, but the silence was heavy. Shadows stretched across the narrow streets, and the glow of fading neon lights gave everything a haunted look. Liara walked beside Daniel, her hand still trembling in his. She couldn't believe she had touched someone and nothing terrible had happened, but her relief was brief. She knew the crowd would not forget tonight. Whispers would spread. Tomorrow, every corner of the city would know. The cursed girl had been touched by a human, and he had lived. That truth would not make her life safer. It would make her more dangerous to those who built their power on fear. Daniel sensed her unease. His steps were calm, but his eyes moved constantly, scanning the rooftops, the alleys, every shadow. He had the look of a soldier, someone who had learned to survive by never trusting silence. "Where do you stay?" he asked. Liara shook her head. "Nowhere permanent. Empty buildings, ruins, sometimes caves outside the city." She hesitated, ashamed. "Nobody lets me stay for long," Daniel frowned. "That's no way to live." Her lips twisted in a bitter smile. "It's the only way I've ever known." They turned down a narrow street, where the stone walls were cracked with age, and the air smelled of rust and dampness. Lyra's senses prickled. Something was wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. "Daniel," she whispered, tugging at his arm. "We shouldn't." A shout cut her words short. Figures stepped from the shadows, blocking their path. Others emerged behind them, cutting off their escape. Alien enforcers, their armor dull but menacing. Weapons gleaming faintly under the dim lights. At the front stood the red-scaled alien from the market. His eyes glowed with hatred. "We warned you, human," he hissed. "You didn't listen." Lyra's chest tightened. Fear clawed at her throat. These weren't just angry citizens. These were men who enforced the will of the elders, the same elders who had named her cursed. Daniel's body shifted slightly, moving in front of her again. His hand went to his knife, but his eyes stayed calm. "You really think surrounding a girl makes you strong?" he said. The red-scaled alien sneered. "She is poison. You're a fool for touching her. But your mistake is our blessing. We can remove you both tonight." The circle tightened. Lyra's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Memories of running, hiding, always being chased, it all came back. But tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't running alone. Daniel's voice dropped, low and steady. "When I say run," he whispered to her, "you run and don't look back." Her eyes widened. "No, I can't leave you. You can," he said firmly. "And you will." Before she could argue, the red-scaled alien raised his weapon. In that instant, Daniel moved. With soldier's reflexes, he lunged, grabbing Lyra's hand and pulling her hard. He didn't run away from the enemy, he ran straight at them. The sudden charge shocked the enforcers. Daniel's knife flashed, slashing the weapon arm of the nearest alien. The man howled, stumbling back. In the chaos, Daniel shoved Liara through a gap and yelled, "Now!" They ran. Boots pounded behind them, shouts echoing through the stone streets. Lyra's lungs burned, but Daniel's grip was iron, pulling her faster than she thought she could move. They twisted through alleys, jumped over broken crates, slipped past crumbling walls. The city became a maze of darkness and fear. Lyra's mind screamed with terror, but another feeling burned stronger: trust. She had never trusted anyone, but now every step, every breath, was tied to the human leading her. Finally, they burst into an abandoned courtyard, weeds pushing through the cracked ground. Daniel shoved an old door open and pulled her inside. The space was dark, dust swirling in the air, broken furniture scattered. He slammed the door shut and pressed his back against it, chest heaving. For a long moment, only their breathing filled the silence. Lyra's knees gave out, and she sank to the floor. Her hands shook violently, but her eyes never left him. "You fought them," she whispered. "You fought them for me." Double quotes. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes sharp, still listening for pursuit. "Of course I did." Her throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. She whispered again, almost to herself, "Nobody's ever done that." Daniel finally looked at her, his voice softer. "Get used to it." The sound of distant boots faded into the night, but Lyara knew this was only the beginning. By standing with her, Daniel had crossed a line that could never be erased. And yet, for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The abandoned building was silent except for the sound of their breathing. Dust hung in the air, glowing faintly in the moonlight that slipped through cracks in the broken roof. Daniel kept his ear pressed against the door for a long time, listening for footsteps outside. Only when the night grew still again did he finally step back. "They're gone," he said, his voice low. Liara sat on the floor, her knees hugged to her chest. Her long silver hair clung to her damp cheeks, and her eyes were wide with exhaustion. She had been chased before, but never like this. Never with someone running beside her, someone fighting for her. Daniel crouched in front of her, studying her face. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head quickly. "No. Only tired." Her voice trembled. He nodded, pulling a small flask from his bag. "Here, water." Liara hesitated before taking it. The metal felt warm in her hands. She sipped, her throat aching with thirst. It was such a simple thing, water given without hesitation. But to her, it felt like the rarest gift. After a moment, Daniel sat beside her, leaning his back against the wall. "They'll look for us," he said calmly. "But they don't know this part of the ruins as well as I do. We'll be safe for now." Liara hugged the flask to her chest. Safe. The word felt strange, almost foreign. She had never been safe. Not once. She turned her head slowly, studying him. His clothes were worn, his boots scarred from long travel. His face carried lines of battles fought and survived. Yet his eyes, those strange human eyes, were steady, unshaken, like nothing could break him. "Why do you help me?" she asked softly. "You could have walked away at the market. You could have left me to them." Daniel looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because I've seen what cruelty does. I fought in a war where people were treated as less than human, less than alive. I promised myself I wouldn't walk away when I saw it happen again." Lyra's chest tightened. She lowered her gaze, ashamed. "But I am not like you. I am marked. Since birth, they said I was cursed. They say anyone who touches me will suffer. Families lost children, and they blamed me. Villagers got sick, and they said I brought the sickness. Even my own blood. My parents left me." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her forehead against her knees. The memories clawed at her like sharp teeth, years of whispers, of empty nights, of being a shadow no one wanted. Daniel's hand moved slightly, then stopped as if he didn't want to scare her. Finally, he placed it gently on her shoulder. The touch was steady, warm. "Liara," he said quietly, "you are not a curse. You're just a girl they chose to blame. Fear makes people cruel." Her heart pounded. His words pierced through the heavy walls she had built inside. Slowly, she raised her head, her eyes wet. "How can you be so sure?" Daniel gave a small smile. "Because I touched you. I bled fighting for you. And I'm still here." The truth of his words struck her harder than anything else. He was right. He had held her hand, he had fought with her, and he was alive. Stronger than ever. Tears slipped down her cheeks. For the first time in her life, they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of release. Daniel leaned his head back against the wall, staring at the broken ceiling. "You deserve more than this. More than hiding in ruins." Liara wiped her face with her sleeve. "Deserve?" she whispered. "I don't even know what that means." He looked at her again, his voice steady. "It means you're worth saving. And I'll prove it to you." The words settled deep in her soul, warming a place she thought was long dead. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe she wasn't cursed, that she wasn't doomed to be untouchable forever. Outside, a faint sound broke the silence, the echo of boots on stone. Daniel's body stiffened, his hand moving to his knife. Liara's breath caught. They weren't safe yet, but this time she wasn't just afraid. This time she had someone beside her. Someone who had already risked everything for her. And for the first time, she thought, maybe I am not alone anymore. Asterisk the faint echo of boots grew louder. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Liara to stay quiet. Her breath caught, her heart hammering in her chest. The ruins around them seemed to shrink, the broken walls offering little protection. Daniel moved to the cracked window, peering through. Torchlight flickered in the distance, bouncing off armor. The enforcers were sweeping the streets like hunters tracking prey. They're searching every corner, he whispered. We don't have much time. Liara hugged herself, fear clawing at her throat. They won't stop. Once the elders send them, they chase until blood is spilled. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we don't give them hours. He turned quickly, scanning the ruined room. Broken chairs, fallen beams, a collapsed staircase. Nothing useful, nothing strong enough to hold back trained fighters. His eyes landed on a rusty metal pipe lying against the wall. He picked it up, tested its weight, and nodded. Liara stared at him. You can't fight them all. Maybe not, Daniel admitted, his voice calm. But I can buy us a chance. Her chest ached at his words. Why did he keep risking himself for her? She wanted to beg him to leave, to save himself, but she couldn't. The thought of him walking away hurt more than the fear of dying. The door rattled. Shadows passed by the cracks. A harsh voice barked an order. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand. Back here, he said, pulling her toward the collapsed staircase. There's a gap behind the stones. Crawl through and don't stop until you're outside the wall. Her eyes widened. What about you? I'll distract them. She shook her head furiously, silver hair whipping around her face. No. If you stay, they'll kill you. Daniel crouched, looking straight into her frightened eyes. His voice was steady, like unshakable ground. I've faced worse. I need you alive, Liara. You're not a curse, you're proof they're wrong. And I won't let them erase that proof tonight. Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to scream, to fight, to hold on to him. But the determination in his gaze stole her words. He believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. The door burst open. Enforcers flooded in, weapons raised, eyes gleaming in the dark. Daniel shoved Liara toward the gap. Go! She crawled into the narrow passage, stone scraping her arms. Fear burned her lungs, but she didn't stop. Behind her, the sound of steel clashing echoed through the ruins. Daniel moved like a storm. His pipe smashed against the first soldier's helmet, sending him sprawling. He ducked under a swing, drove his fist into another's chest, then kicked hard to break free. They outnumbered him, but his fury made him a force none expected. Where is the girl? One shouted. Daniel's voice was sharp as iron. Far beyond your reach. Liara crawled until her hands met cool night air. She pulled herself out into the weeds beyond the wall, gasping. But her heart twisted violently. Daniel was still inside. She turned back toward the gap, torn between escape and the unbearable thought of leaving him. From inside, she heard grunts, shouts, the clang of metal against metal. Daniel! She whispered, tears spilling. The clash grew louder, then suddenly silence. Liara froze, her body trembling. Every part of her wanted to run, but her heart screamed to go back. She couldn't abandon him. Not him. Not the one who had given her hope. The ruins stayed dark, torchlight flickering faintly through the cracks. Then, at last, a figure stumbled out through the broken door. Daniel. He was bleeding from a cut across his forehead, his clothes torn, but he was still standing. His eyes found hers, and despite the blood on his face, he gave her a faint smile. You're safe, he said, his voice rough but steady. Relief crashed over her like a wave, but so did fear. Because she knew this was not the end. Tonight was only the beginning of something far bigger. And for the first time, Liara felt something stronger than fear. She felt the desperate will to fight for him, just as he fought for her. The night air was sharp, filled with the faint smell of smoke and metal. Daniel leaned heavily against the broken wall, blood trickling from the cut on his forehead. His breathing was rough, but his eyes were still steady, still unbroken. Liara rushed to him, her hands trembling as they touched his arm. "You're hurt," she whispered. He gave her a faint smile. "I've been hurt worse." Her heart ached at his stubborn calmness. She had lived her entire life believing she was poison, believing she was cursed to bring nothing but suffering. Yet here was a man who had bled for her, fought for her, and still stood tall. The sound of voices drifted through the ruins. Torches flickered again in the distance. The enforcers were regrouping, more determined than before. "They're coming back," Daniel said quietly. He straightened, forcing strength into his battered body. His hand tightened on the pipe. "We need to move," Liara shook her head. "No, you can't fight them again. You'll die." He looked at her, his brown eyes burning with quiet fire. "If I die protecting you, then it's worth it." Her breath caught. Those words pierced her deeper than any wound. Nobody had ever said she was worth anything. Now here he was, ready to give his life for her. But something shifted inside her then. For years she had lived in fear, letting others decide who she was. Tonight, she realized she had a choice. She could keep hiding, keep believing she was cursed, or she could stand. For him, for herself, for the truth. "No," she said firmly, her voice stronger than she expected. "I won't let you stand alone." Daniel blinked, surprised. "Liara," she stepped forward, her silver hair catching the moonlight. For the first time, she wasn't shrinking, she wasn't hiding. She faced the ruins, where the torches burned brighter, and lifted her voice. "I am not cursed." She shouted. Her words echoed across the stones, raw and full of defiance. "You call me poison because you fear me. But look at him." She pointed at Daniel. "He touched me, he fought for me, and he still lives. Your lies end tonight." The enforcers froze in the torchlight, their faces twisting with uncertainty. Some lowered their weapons, doubt creeping into their eyes. For generations, the story of her curse had ruled them. Now standing tall and unafraid, she broke it with nothing but truth. Daniel's chest swelled with pride as he watched her. For the first time, she wasn't the untouchable girl. She was a flame refusing to be smothered. The red-scaled leader snarled, trying to regain control. "Don't listen to her lies. She is dangerous." But his voice no longer carried the same weight. The crowd behind him murmured, uncertain, their fear cracking. Daniel stepped beside Liara, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "They can't unsee the truth now," he whispered. Lyra's heart raced, but she stood taller, her fear dissolving like mist in the sun. She realized something powerful. She wasn't cursed. She wasn't untouchable. She was loved. The torches wavered, and slowly, one by one, the enforcers pulled back. Their leader cursed it under his breath, but he too knew the moment had slipped from his grasp. The power of fear was broken. When the ruins finally fell silent again, Liara turned to Daniel. Her eyes were wet, but her voice steady. "You gave me something no one else ever did." He looked at her softly. "What's that?" She placed her hand against his chest, over his heartbeat. "You made me feel human. You made me feel loved." For a moment, the world around them didn't exist. No curses, no fear, no chasing shadows. Only the warmth of two hearts that had found each other in the darkest night. Daniel smiled, his hand closing gently around hers. "And I'm not letting go." Liara leaned into him, her silver hair brushing his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she wasn't a ghost in the crowd. She was alive. She was free, and as dawn began to rise over the ruins, painting the sky with light, she knew this was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning.